Yeah, there's like, I think one really big issue and something that every person's gonna have to deal with in their lives, and just it's a constant battle, is having the character and like the fortitude to deal with adversity in different facets of life. And I think sport in general, like no matter what level you played it in, teaches you at a high level how to deal with adversity and how to overcome it. Also, the do's and don'ts of, because there's going to be moments where you're hit with something like in a football game, you have fourth quarter, you're down a score. Are you going to fold or not? You know what I mean? You're a young guy, you have a test coming up. You know what I mean? You have 4 hours to study. Are you going to study or you're not? You got bills to pay. Are you going to pay it or not? You know what I mean? A relationship that you have with a family, a friend, a significant other. Are you going to fight for it or not? Like that adversity, I feel like it's something that a lot of people haven't been trained to expose to enough to deal with. And I think a lot of people who played sports, athletes included, and people who have been around sports will realize that sport helps you build an ability and capability to deal with adversity at a high level. Hey guys, it's Omer Abdallah, former defensive lineman at St. Mary's University, and you are watching Undress the Jersey.
All right, so welcome everybody back to another episode of Undress the Jersey. Today we're here with Omer Abdallah, who's a former football player for St. Mary's University in Halifax, Nova Scotia. This is the first time we're ever meeting. We connected on LinkedIn, which, by the way, LinkedIn, for anyone who's not on there, is like, it's a gold mine. 2, you meet so many people. Like this morning, I just connected with Donovan Bailey. Now, I know like a kid, like when people hear connection, it means like, oh, you know him, like you had a conversation with him. I'm like, no, it's more like a friend request. But at the same time, he had to like click accept. No,
exactly. Yeah.
So I mean that's pretty cool. And I think people have a perception of LinkedIn being like, oh, this professional website, and I don't have a LinkedIn account because like I don't have a job. Like, why would I be on there? But like, I've been treating it a little bit like Twitter.
Yeah.
Like I'll just throw out. I'll have a thought. Now, obviously, it's not a tweet where I'm like, "Yo, what are man saying?" Like, you obviously have to tweak it a little bit because you got executives on there. But it's awesome. Like, So Omar, welcome to the show.
I appreciate it, man.
Just give yourself a little description to describe yourself, who you are, where you're from, to the viewers.
Well, so I was a first and foremost former defensive lineman at St. Mary's University. Graduated in 2017 with a Bachelor of Commerce. Currently working in IT consulting, and been back in Toronto since 2017. Been back to Toronto since 2017. Been playing ball since I was a kid. I fell in love with football in the 4th grade. I was playing ever since. Hung up the cleats after graduation. Then just started working and coaching. And most of my time's been consumed with, coaching the younger guys, rep football, volunteering a lot. And then obviously, hopping on this podcast because of a sparked a great interest. I saw some great interviews and some really good key points you mentioned in other podcasts, and a lot of things that athletes and former athletes deal with in and outside of sport. So it really inspired me to get onto the podcast and talk to you.
This is something that I don't even consider on my day-to-day, is like real people are listening to these episodes. Like I edit everything. I'm a one-man show. I do the graphics, I do the videos, I do the posting, whatever. But like I often forget, like some people are like, when I have friends be like, yo, like I watched this, I watched a couple of episodes. We're like, oh, you're actually watching? You're actually listening. Because I don't do it to try to like get something from it. I like I enjoy making videos and editing and making posts and stuff. So to hear you say that, I'm like, thank you very much. What you were telling us about your upbringing. So let's start there. Let's kind of get this into a linear timeline.
Okay, so
where were you born? You were telling me East African, like all of it.
Okay, so So what had happened was, and so my parents, they came to first America. They came to America first. And so my parents left Djibouti, where they were from, where they met. And three of my siblings were born in Djibouti as well. They came to America because my dad actually needed hip surgery. So that was kind of the initial reason why they came to North
Okay.
America. My dad had like a really bad fall. He was playing sports himself. And so he came here to get the surgery, and then the goal was to come back. So that surgery didn't end up happening until like 2005. And that was like after more siblings were born and everything. So
Hmm.
my parents came from America, came to Canada. When they came to Canada, had more kids. I was born in Ottawa.
Okay.
And then the rest of my siblings were as well, except one was born in Montreal. And
Hmm.
so grew up in Ottawa, ended up hopping up and moving to Edmonton, Alberta in 2002, 2003. And the reason why, because my sister, being really smart, she found out that the wait list for hip surgery in Alberta was shorter than it was in
Nice
Ottawa.
one.
So we ended up moving there. And again, same intention was, okay, we'll stay here for a bit and then go back to Ottawa. That didn't end up happening.
Mm.
We show up there, economy was booming at the time. My dad ended up getting the surgery in 2005, and then we ended up staying there until I was in high school. Siblings graduated as well. And then that's kind of where it kicked off for me to start playing football and stuff like that.
Okay, so you were telling me that no, you just said your dad hurt his hip by playing sports.
Yeah.
But then like at the same time, like before the call, you were saying, "Oh, my parents were like school first, sports is just like something on the side for fun." But your
Exactly. Yeah.
dad played sports, so what like where's that contradiction coming in?
So the caveat here is that again he was playing it recreationally, just like with his friends and stuff like that. So it had nothing to
Okay.
do with it being tied with an organization or a school or anything like that. But for them coming here, a huge priority for them is making sure the kids are educated, because they
Okay.
themselves, like, they weren't formally educated in a university. So for them, a big aspiration for them was that since we're here, take advantage of the system that you have, get educated, and on top of that, like, from my youngest sibling to my oldest sibling, like, everybody graduated high school and everybody are working, minus two are still in school. The
Okay.
rest are all working professionals.
That's huge.
Yeah,
But so clearly your parents never saw sport as like a vehicle to help you achieve the ultimate
exactly. Yeah,
goal.
exactly. Yeah, they didn't even know that. So we started playing
Why is
football.
that? Why do you think that is?
I don't think they had the knowledge, to be honest with you, because I think to them, sports has always just been kind of a form of recreation. And she saw it, my mom saw it as honestly a way to get her kids to be not idle and not to be doing things they shouldn't be doing. So for us, playing sports was okay, extracurricular activity, school, football, family time, and that was it, just to keep yourself busy.
But is that the I've never been to Africa. Is that the overall or and clearly it has to do with generations too. Like I'm sure it's not all like that. Like I'm sure it's getting
Mhm,
better. You see these programs like NBA,
mhm,
world, becoming a global sport, but
mhm.
in Djibouti, like how big was sports over there? Whether or not yourself, I'm just assuming.
No, it wasn't very big at all. Like, literally, like, there's three neighboring countries. You have Somalia, Djibouti, and Ethiopia. Like, none of them were, like, even in terms of soccer. Soccer's the biggest sport back home, and
Yes.
so none of them were FIFA qualifying. None of them were really
Mhm.
high up there in terms of sport and generally, like, Olympic level too. So most of it was just going back to just recreation, fun at the end of the day. And then, like, if you wanted a career, quote unquote, it was, doctor, lawyer, some sort of profession on the other end.
Was that ever so? I'm assuming that your parents are like throwing this into your brain from the moment you're born in terms of like, yo, you need to be successful, go get your education, become a doc. Like, did you feel any pressure to become a doctor, a lawyer, like any of these
Oh,
traditional careers?
no, no, no. The thing for us was that, like, as long as we found a career path that we enjoyed, my parents were all for it. It just went back to making sure that you
Okay.
have that education and having that background so you be successful. Us personally speaking, like, my parents are like hardest working people I've ever met in my life. Like, my dad both of them came here, got educated here. Like, they both went back to school. My mom's a PSW, personal support worker now. My dad will literally was working. He couldn't work initially because of his hip injury. The minute he had the hip surgery, got his taxi driver's license, bought out the taxi cab himself, and then started working himself. So he's pretty much was an independent contractor before it was even a thing. So him, I used to see him literally every day, like 5 a.m. in the morning, getting up, grinding, coming back late at night, and just constantly working. And so for us as a young guy, it's like you see your parents working that hard.
Sure.
You see how much work they're putting in, and they're telling you like, if you want to live a better life and not having to work this hard, working this hard because we have you guys, in a sense. So we saw that as like motivation for ourselves. Okay, we see our parents grinding like this. Why aren't we doing the same thing?
This is something that, like, not the traditional Canadian family. Like, okay, I grew up in the smallest town.
Yeah.
I grew up in Churro, which I'm sure you've driven by with,
Yeah.
and people who aren't from Churro put so much disrespect on it. You know, it doesn't sit right with me because they just see it as this stop on the side of the highway and McDonald's and Wendy's, and that's it. But like, as someone who grew up there, like, there's it's a nice place, you know, have some respect. But like, so all of my friends, this is something that the traditional Canadian family is, and I'm speaking broadly, doesn't necessarily grow up with. Like,
Exactly.
like all of the conversations that I've had with people from immigrant families speak on, like, the number one pillar in their family is this theme to work hard, get your shit done right, don't take any anything for granted. Like as someone who grew up in that life, why, like, and maybe you can relate or lean on your experience or your relationships with people that look like me, come from Canada, whatever. What do you think is the biggest difference between the two cultures, the two families?
Honestly, I would say the thing is, your environment dictates a lot. I'm a huge component of like, or proponent of that, is like, your environment dictates a lot of who you are. So for me, things like, for example, like, everything was given based off a reward system. You earned something, it was given. You did something good, you're given this. You you did something bad, you're given this. You know what I mean? So for us, it was like nothing was ever handed just because it was handed to you.
That's right.
It was, for example, I'll give you a small example. Like, the first time, you remember when PS2 came out and it was like the craziest thing on the planet? Like, people were freaking out. So we only got a PS2 because we got straight A's. It wasn't because it was, okay, mom, like, PS2 came out, let me get a PS2.
Merry Christmas or happy birthday, like, we love you.
Exactly. Yeah. It didn't necessarily say like, oh, they didn't love you. It's just they were teaching us that concept.
That's right.
Of rewards. So for us, like, the quote unquote grind, or like the adversity, was taught at a young age, and still at a young age,
which is a huge advantage.
Exactly. And so when I got older and I started noticing my peers maybe struggling with certain tasks, or like not being exposed to certain environments, I'm like, initially I was like, yo, why is that the case? Like, why are they like struggling here and I'm not? And then as I got older, matured more, I realized, okay, it's because these values were instilled in me as a young age, and it was a norm. It was a norm for me. It was never like, oh, you know, take this, have that, and then no concept of working towards it. Like, there was responsibilities at a young age, and I valued completely. Like, I'll give you an example. So we had a big family. So when I was in the 5th, 6th grade, my 2 younger brothers were in the lower end of elementary. So who do you think was getting their lunches ready and, you know, walking to and from school, had a key to the house in the 5th grade, walking to and from? I was doing it. You know what I mean? And now it's because siblings in high school, parents are both working. So who's that going to fall upon? It's going to fall upon myself. And my parents gave me that trust and responsibility, and I got used to it. I got used to it. So you get used to leading at a young age and handing responsibility at a young age. So when you get older, it's like, it's not something brand new to you.
No, it's instilled in you. And this is why I love sports, because sports also teaches you all of those things that you just discovered. Like, I think, you know, you see it the most when you have teammates who are like, oh man, coach ain't playing me. Like, coach expecting me. Like, yo, coach hates me. Like, coach doesn't see how good I am. And everyone else who is actually getting time is looking at that guy and be like, no, bro, like, it's just, you don't work hard. You're not good. How often are you in the gym after practice? How often are you waking up? Or like, you're not making the necessary, you know, sacrifices or doing the actions that provide you with the reward of playing time.
Exactly. And
So,
like,
so just to cut you off there is like, I think sports teaches you that at a young age, but I think,
mhm,
you kind of need both. You need, because,
exactly,
the sport's only going to teach you so much, or you only spend so much time in the sport.
exactly,
You
yeah,
spend a whole lot more time at home, and you spend a whole
exactly, yeah,
lot more time, like, it's important to have those extra influences on top of sport, which I
exactly,
feel
yeah,
like a lot of immigrant families, have, and not all of them, obviously,
yeah.
but like,
Like you're used to it. So for example, like if I'm like 10 years old, 11 years old, and my coach is telling me, Omar, your 3-point stance is wrong. Give me constructive criticism, or things aren't going my way. That's like that happens to me in regular life.
it's
So that
familiar. Yeah.
it's familiar. So like when he gives me those tips, I'm like, oh, cool. There's no hard feelings. I see him as a role model. Like, okay, this person who knows more than me is helping me, giving me these tools I need. So I'm gonna accept it.
Mm, mm.
But if you've never been told you're wrong, never been told you're doing something
That's so
incorrectly,
true. That's so
immediately
true.
you're gonna react and you'll be like, how am I wrong? How am I understanding this? You know?
And so I'm obviously a big Gary V guy, and
Mhm.
this is something like he says he feels bad for those kids who are born in trust fund babies, and like,
Yeah.
born in these really rich families, because like they don't have to work for any monetary, like, there's a certain motivation that comes,
Mhm.
with like growing up not having a lot, or being taught like you have to work for these things you want. And so like,
Exactly.
you know it's hard for me to believe, and this is my first time ever, like, this
Mhm.
podcast, I use it as an opportunity to
Yeah.
think of new ideas.
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
but but um but like, this whole idea of like, a conversation that I have with my one of my close friends a lot is like, yo, like, the goal isn't to be rich, but you also want to be rich. Like, you want to
Mhm.
have enough things in order to, like, you don't have to stress about the financial burden. and
Exactly. Yeah.
and and the fun part is like the pursuit of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So like, you almost feel bad for these kids, or like, sometimes I see friends or people I know who
Mhm.
come from wealth, and I'm
Yeah.
just like, that's kind of boring. Like, you already have the Range Rover, you already
Mhm.
have your own your own
Mhm.
huge apartment, and you like, I don't know, this is
Mhm.
something that, like, I enjoy that pursuit of trying to get there, because I'm far from
Mhm.
it.
Exactly. Well, the thing is, that pursuit, or learning about that pursuit young, like it prepares you for so much in life. Like that's me, for example. So when I was playing in high school, my number one goal was like, hey, I got to get a Division 1 scholarship. Like that's my goal.
Yeah.
So like I did everything in my power to do so. Like I literally, so grade 12 year, I was gonna go to a prep school in Indiana with a couple kids from Scarborough at the time. So I made my highlight tape. I could have went to any CIS school I wanted to, in a sense. Like there
Okay.
wasn't there wasn't something that was preventing from that. But me, again, big goals, big dreams, get my school paid for, play the highest level you possibly can. So right before we're about to go, we find out that our scholarship got cut. So like cut budget cuts, whatever.
Mm.
So when that happened, I took pretty much a gap year in Ontario, just trained. Then I went to a junior college in San Fran, and I was there for a semester.
San
And so
Francisco,
yeah, yeah,
California.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So it was a jump, but like it wasn't something unfamiliar. Like again, like as you know, as an athlete, like when you're around other competitive people, like
That's right.
the best comes out of you.
That's
So
right.
me, I was loving it. Like I was playing with guys, like one guy, like literally 3 or 4 guys I play with are either they were in the NFL in the last couple of years, or they just like they're teetering between rosters. So they were guys.
Yeah.
And so the only reason why I left is because I was paying out of pocket. I had OSAP, so Ontario
Mm.
student loans, obviously. And so they didn't give me more funding for the next semester. So I had
Right.
to make I had to make a choice. I was like, okay, so either I sit out a full year, and the way NCAA eligibility works is really bad, where it's like if you're Canadian, they don't necessarily give you the benefit of the doubt back. And this is back in 2013. So if I sat a year, I lose a year. And if I go back to JUCO, it's another year I lost. So even if I went back, sat a year, came back, there's 2 years of eligibility that are gone.
Yes.
Even if I went to a Division 1, I wouldn't have a lot of years.
Got you.
So my brother was at SMU at the time. It was his first year at SMU at the time. He went there. He was there. And
Was
so
he
when I
was he
came,
playing sports?
yeah, he's playing football. He's a wide receiver there.
Okay.
He's a wide receiver there. Yeah. So he was there, and he was there the last year. SMU was like great at that time. They went to the AOS final that year. He was playing. They lost, but to Mount A, like last play kind of situation. So he told me, come to SMU. You know what I mean? Like, you have a spot here, don't worry about it. Went on a visit there during the break, loved it, fell in love. So I went there the following year. This is where adversity kicks in. So when I went, I saw his tape. I saw the tape of the guys there. And I was watching the game. It's like, bro, this team's full of guys. Like, these are like 3 of the guys were on CFL rosters. They came back for a final year. Like a bunch of vets. Like, they literally didn't win the AUS championship because of one play. Like, one play dictated the game. It was somebody got mossed, game was done. So me, I'm like, okay, if I go here, fastest trip to go to a Vanier Cup. I'm playing with my brother. I never played my brother before on the same football team. And on top of that too, like, it's St. Mary's. Like, St. Mary's out east is like, that's like, if you want to play football, you go to St. Mary's.
Yeah, same area. I mean, I'm rocking the X-ring. We got a couple of UTech bowls, but no, I hear you. How did you like the city of Halifax as someone from Ontario, and I'm currently living in Toronto.
Yeah,
I had a ton of teammates from Ontario, Toronto, all this stuff.
Yeah,
and just the pride of being from Ontario, or specifically Toronto, is like, yo, we're the greatest in Canada and everyone wants to beat us. But I'm like, yeah, like, but we're here in Scotia, living in this little secret that no one knows about, how beautiful and nice and everything is. And so, like, that's great. Enjoy your Toronto. Like, we're happy here. So what was your experience like on the East Coast?
I'm not gonna lie to you, it was strangely refreshing, because when I came to Toronto, like, again, I wasn't from Toronto originally, so I was only living in Toronto from like 2011 up until 2014. So it's hustle bustle, everybody's really like about themselves.
Yes.
They're like, nobody's really open and friendly. So when I came to Halifax, it was like a complete 360. I never met people who literally, you don't even know who they are, never come across them, strike a conversation. I had a guy after an exhibition game. He saw me across the street from Sobeys, and he's seen my SMU logo, waves me up, comes up, gives me a dap, says, how's it going, how's the team looking, yo man, keep it up, and then just goes off. I'm like, what? I'm like,
and you're like, who is this guy?
Who is this? Yeah, because like the city's small, so everybody knows about everything. And on top of that, like, there's the Mooseheads, and there's St. Mary's football in Halifax, just at least in Halifax for so like those are the biggest sports organizations to follow. So everybody knew everything. So when I came there, I didn't realize how tight the city was and how interconnected everything is until I was in it. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, everybody knows everybody, and like everybody's in it and like participating and knowing about you. And like, you think someone's doesn't know who you are, but they know who you are.
So St. FX is in Antigonish, which is smaller than small. Like, like without St. FX being there, it would, like, I don't even know what the population would be, but St. FX has about 5,000 students. And I would say the town probably has like 6,000 people. So it's like real small. And you want to talk about people knowing you, and like, as an athlete, you're even held on a higher pedestal, and like going to the pub or doing all that dumb stuff that college students do. Like, as an athlete, you got to be careful, because somebody that you look at doesn't know who you are, but they know Coach K, they know Leo, the AD. So like, talk to me about the student experience, specifically, from an athlete's perspective in Halifax. Because I think about this a lot in terms of, having conversations with people that went to like Western or Guelph or like U of T or Ryerson, where you can kind of hide in these big cities. You go to class and then boom, you disperse, and then you're walking around the Eaton Center and you don't know. Where in Antigonish, it's like you go to class and then you're all walking to the same street because you all live there, and then you're going to the same restaurant. So you see everyone all the time. Is Halifax a blend or a mix between the two?
A little bit, I would say. The thing for me, like, to be honest, like, as a student athlete, like, when I was there, same with like myself, my brother, like, we're Muslim, so like partying and like drinking and stuff, like, off the table, like, we never did any of that stuff. So, but we knew people who did. Like, we knew our teammates, what was going on. Like, after games, we hear all the stories and stuff like that. So for us, off the field,
how was that for you? Because I'm curious. I'm curious to know, when you're in university, especially, I know how East Coasters are.
Yeah.
Like, how did you deal with the pressure or the societal pressures that came along with that?
Oh no, like I was always taught as a young age, like from my parents, like be your own man. So like my thing is the ignorance for me wasn't necessarily, oh, these people are just like terrible people. It's like, no, this is a learning opportunity. They've never come across maybe a black Muslim before. They've
Right.
never come across someone from this country. So why am I going to keep them in the dark about this when I can educate them? I had guys on
Nice.
my team just talking to me about the most random stuff, and it's like they'd say the stuff like, "Oh, bro, I don't mean to offend you." It's like, no, they're not offending me. Like, I'd rather have you know these things than you Google something, find something completely wrong,
And
or have a
assume, yeah.
assume exactly. So like when I was there, like there's a pretty good Muslim population there, mostly like Arab and like Indo-Pak. But like there was like a small community of like African Muslims here or there and like second generation. But being there, like there's a pretty decent large community, like pretty large community, but there wasn't necessarily any pressure per se. It was just coming across people who weren't as informed. I saw it more of as like an educational experience for them. You know, they'd ask me, okay, I never met someone from your country before. Like, what is it like? Oh,
Right.
I heard this on TV. Is this true? You know, some people are saying this about the religion. Is this true? It's like, no, it's like this. And you have a good opportunity to explain and talk to people. And then when you do that, you're bridging a gap, you're building a connection. So
That's right.
these stereotypes, these misconceptions are going to be gone. And that's something that a lot of people, unfortunately speaking, like if someone's like from, let's say they're a Caucasian person, they feel shy to ask these questions.
Yes, because we don't want to offend you guys.
Exactly, yeah. And at the same time, someone talking to somebody who's an ethnic minority or religious minority, you shouldn't feel some type of way of someone asking you a question out of ignorance, unless maybe if it's coming from a maybe like a negative perspective or coming from a way of like malicious intent. I
That's right.
understand that.
Yeah, you
But
you you should pick up on the energy, like,
exactly, yeah.
yeah.
Sure. So like if they're coming with you out of pure curiosity, like for example, I'd go to Friday prayer after a walkthrough or before I walk, they go to Friday prayer. I'd come back. I'd sometimes be wearing like Islamic garments. So friends would ask me, "Yo, what are you wearing?" Like you know what I mean? Not
Sure.
because of like,
No,
what are you wearing?
like
It's
they're
like no,
they're clowning
they're like,
you.
yo, they're like,
No.
yo, they're like, yo, what do you like? They've never seen it before. You know what I mean?
Right.
Some guys be, yo, that's fly, man. Oh, where can I get me one of those? I'm
Right,
like,
right,
I'm
right.
like, yo, no, I got you, don't worry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I talked to them like that, and then they were more educated. Like more
That's
often than
right.
not, like it was a more positive experience in the long run for them. You know what I mean? And now they have something they understand.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And just listening to you talk about that, I can tell that you're like a genuine, like you said, it's deeply rooted in you. Like your family instill, like, be your own man, like
Yeah.
be proud, accept yourself for who you are. So you've never really had to battle with this whole, oh, I'm trying to impress my teammates, so I'm gonna go out drinking with them at the dome on Friday night.
Yeah, no, not at all, man.
Okay.
Not at all.
Okay,
And
so
the thing is, the
that's
good thing about these guys too is like, despite the stereotype around athletes, man, these guys weren't. There was no peer pressure, man. You said no, like
that's right.
guys were like, all right, cool, man. Like like you're your
I
own dude.
agree. I
You know what
agree.
I mean? Like I've never had a situation where guys like, oh, come on, Omar, man. Like, what? How you mean? Like, it just one time I was like, nah, man. Like, we're grown guys in university. You know what I mean? It's not high school anymore. We're like, some people may be like a little mature and be like, come on. Like, uni, it's like, you don't want to? Okay, cool. They invite you out of like just being friendly, I guess. But
Mhm.
if you say no, you have like a limit or like a boundary. They're gonna
That's right.
always respect that.
So this is something I want to, bridge or tie into is this whole idea that, you know s- in a large part black youth,
Mhm.
society puts this pressure on that to grow up, if you come from a bad neighborhood, quote
Yeah,
unquote, or if you're less privileged, the only way to make it is become a rapper or an athlete, make
exactly.
it professional. You have two options. And I
Yeah.
remember having a conversation with T-Bear Upshaw,
Mhm.
who played at X. He's an all Canadian basketball player, and he was like, yeah, growing up, he's from the square, in
Yeah.
Halifax.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he was like, growing up for me, like, if I wanted to walk into the community wide gym with holding a skateboard and wearing skater clothes, like, people look at me like, bro, what the hell are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
what's wrong with you? Go get up. Like, you were just deemed, like, there was a pressure that you couldn't really veer outside of being a basketball player or an
Yeah.
athlete. So like, now that you're an IT consultant and you're dealing with technology, what was the moment, or maybe it was a lifelong thing and maybe it goes back to your parents, but when did you think that you were only using football as a vehicle, and you of course you wanted to see how far you could take that? If that made you into an NFL player, I'm sure you wouldn't turn that down.
Obviously, yeah.
But like it's maybe even at St. Mary's, when was it like did you ever battle with the whole idea, be like, okay, I really want to become an IT tech solutions guy, but I'm a football player too, or I'm only seen as a football player? Where, like, take everything I just threw out there and try to pull something together.
I got an interesting story for you. I'll give you an idea of like where this stemmed from. So when we moved to Alberta, me and my brother Mohammed, we went to a school called Malcolm Twiddle, and so we just showed up at the school, and like we never, like when we lived in Ottawa, like Ottawa's pretty multicultural too, so Alberta wasn't really necessary at the time. So like for some reason, my parents, my mom especially, used to always get calls about our quote unquote behavior in class, right? And so we got a call into the office, right? And then my mom like got fed up. She's like, this doesn't make any sense. You guys never really need behavioral issues. What's going on? So she goes to meet the principal, and then she's a doctor. She has her doctorate. She's a principal, really esteemed. And so me and my brother are waiting outside the room, you know what I mean? And then she comes, takes us, she leaves the lady's office. We're driving back home. And then she told me immediately, she's like, Omar, you're transferring schools once the semester's over. And my brother was going to junior high, so it didn't matter. And so we're like, what happened? And then this lady had the audacity. So she said to my mom, she's like, I don't know why you're in such a fuss, like in terms of your kids, like they're not going to amount to anything anyway. They're going to be into drugs or just nobodies. She said it verbatim to my mom. And so my mom told it to us, and we were like, bro, I was in the 3rd grade. My brother was going into junior high. And mom was like, remember what she said. It's like, this is what people think. This is what some people think about you.
Wow.
This is what some people think about you. And so that, my parents, like, they're cognizant, like, even though they're African, like from African descent, like they're cognizant of racism, they're cognizant of prejudice. And they knew that, especially for us being Black on one end and then Muslim on the other end, you have a double-edged sword here. You have the 2 targets on your back. She always tell us, like, you're not going to be given the benefit of the doubt a lot of times. So it's upon you to, despite this kind of crutch you have, it's unfortunate, but you have to accept it's life. You have to go above and beyond. And so for me and my brother and the rest of my siblings, that understanding made us a little bit more aware and multifaceted in terms of what we wanted to life. We never saw ourselves inside of one shoe or one size kind of perspective. So we looked at everything multifaceted. So for me, when I saw football, I loved football. Football was like my first love in sport. Wanted to go to NFL, like literally, like first Super Bowl I watched, I think, was the Super Bowl with Big Ben, where Big Ben won his first ring, and Jerome Bettis. So like I loved football from that point. But I knew as older I got, like, this is something that can take me to where I want to get to. You know what I mean? Like in terms of not worrying about my finances, not worrying about school. I knew it was a vehicle for myself at a young age. And so don't get me wrong, like my number one priority is like, if I can make it to become a professional, be a professional.
Of course.
But I knew that along the way, God knows what can happen to you. I knew buddies who had career-ending injuries in high school. I seen it firsthand. I seen people who literally just fell out of love with the sport and then they're out of it. I went to school with buddies that I know myself that went to St. Mary's. They left without a degree. They were said, league or die.
It happens all the time.
That was league or die. So me, I knew from that point on, I'm like, football is important to me, but it's gonna get me where I want to get to. And like in terms of career path and these things of that nature, I didn't necessarily have a career path idea until I got around closer to university, and then it kind of stemmed my interest. But I always knew that football was a vehicle to get me where I wanted to get to. You know what I mean? In terms of being 100%. Able to support my family, have a family one day, being able to be, a role model in the community. Because again, like one thing that you touched on yourself is that since there is only kind of 2 facets people see where a Black person can be in terms of, athlete, rapper, successful, you know what I mean? Why isn't there people who are professionals that look like me, talk like me, and act like me, or come from my same backgrounds, existing that I can have someone to rely upon? I didn't have that in my life. The best role model I had was my parents. Very grateful for that. Other than that, I didn't have any Black coaches until university. Didn't have any throughout high school. So for myself, that was just in the back of my head. I'm like, when I'm done sport, or playing in like physically playing, I'm gonna go back. Like I want to be that person, that role model that maybe the other person, that one kid is looking up towards, trying to seek out, you know? And so even now, like a lot of my buddies, some of them went to X2, U of T, like we all coach Durham Dolphins football. And these are all former athletes who coach, all professionals. Some even played in the CFL, for example. And so we want to be those guys for those kids to see, okay.
Right, because you didn't have that growing up.
Exactly. So there's a way out. It's like, yo, like you can play football. Use it as a vehicle. Like you go to the league, great. If it doesn't happen to you, then you have life. Like there's a life after the field. Even if you play football to X date, you retire. What are you doing after you retire? What are you gonna do with yourself? A lot of athletes struggle with it. Like they only identify themselves as, I'm an athlete, I'm a basketball player, I'm a football player.
That's right.
So who are you when the game's not there? What are you doing when the game's not around?
And it matters how you're perceiving yourself too. Like
exactly, yeah.
Like if you're labeling yourself as just the athlete, then you're going to feel lost as soon as you have that career-ending injury, or your career's over, or you graduate and then you don't get the offers, or if you don't get scholarship. Like all this kind of stuff plays a role. And you know, I just want to take a moment to like, you know, like appreciate how well you are at, like, your emotional intelligence is like off the charts. Like your awareness for people and thoughts and understanding, you know, oh, this person's coming from a malicious place or not. Like your ability to, like, I feel like I have the same sense where, like, the fact this is blowing my mind is that we've never met before. We messages, and we're able to have conversations that feel natural and comfortable.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, I think sports allows people like us to, you know, almost develop those skills, because the amount of teammates that you know cycle through in the course of your entire career, from a kid to whatever, is like you're constantly dodging and like trying to learn and get a sense for all these different personality types.
Exactly, yeah.
Like we've both had those teammates who it's league or die.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just ball. Yeah. And then we've also had teammates who blame other people, and like there's just so many different personality types that you get introduced to as an athlete.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorite parts about sports, is like the human aspect that you learn about.
Exactly. Yeah.
Role models, like representation. So I started an internship with it's a startup here in Toronto called Athlete Tech Group. And they're a media and events company, and they're this ecosystem of professional athletes at the highest level, like the Fred Van Vliets and the CJ McCollums, and, you know, just the elite level athletes, and then tech entrepreneurs, so startups, and, you know, just people doing tech-based investing and all that. And basically Athlete Tech Group is trying to provide education for these athletes, bridge the gap between the two, and help athletes, you know, take control of their financial security for when their thing is done. And so at the end of this month, I'm sure ATG would appreciate me plugging this, is on February 27th, we're having what's called Tech Summit Black, and it's an online virtual conference where we're bringing these professional athletes. We're bringing the Bruce Croxtons, who's the Dragon Den, you know, these kind of people together, and educating Black youth on, you know, what Omar does, and, you know, the career paths, and, you know, technology being the number one industry that's producing the most billionaires. And it's the future. So we're like, yo, I think it's like 2 point something % of the entire Canadian tech industry. Only 2.6% are Black people, like Black employees. And so we're like, yo, this is a vibe. This is the future. Like, there are careers we want to educate in terms of, you can be a content creator, you can be an esports gamer, you can develop apps, you can be an IT guy. So it's like the whole theme around the message is like the lack of representation.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you touched on that too, is like growing up, even throughout sports, and I don't know why. Maybe it's football, maybe it's where, like, out west, where you grew up, like, why wasn't there more representation of these Black professionals Like,
Mhm.
just speak on the importance of representation and, how that impacted your life. And
Mhm.
clearly now, because clearly you see the importance of it,
Exactly. Yeah.
you're trying to do that for the next generation. Like, how would your development have changed or have differed if
Mhm.
you did have black role models outside of
Mhm.
just your parents?
Exactly. So honestly, like I'd want to say in terms of out west, why the representation wasn't there too much. I'm assuming it's because of the population. Most the football organizations that exist, there was one organization I did play for that was really like they represented. They were I'm trying to forget their names. So there's one organization called the Millwoods Grizzlies. So I only played for them I think 2 seasons. So them I may have forgotten about them actually. So they were the only team I can think of that I actually came across that had like African American or Afro Canadian individuals on staff, and that's because their great one of their great grandfathers played for the Eskimos. Those and
Okay.
then it was a son and a father who were coaches, and so they coached. So that was like the only incidents, and I'm assuming maybe it's the population because when I came to Ontario, there's a lot more
Sure.
Afro
Yeah.
Canadian coaches of the like. So I'm assuming that could have been maybe the carry out for a difference there, but in terms of importance of having representation, for me personally, like I see it in two different ways. So it's important to have different people from different backgrounds in your life in coaching and sport or whatever facet of life
Hmm.
it is, because you're gonna have different perspectives, you're gonna see different people in different ways, and
That's
it's
right.
gonna expose you and you'll be able to interact with people either professionally, personally,
Yep.
in relationships way better. So it's needed in all facets. But the representation part why it's so important is because there's gonna be times where you're going to feel a certain way and you're not going to think the person who's of a different race, religion, or background is going to relate to you because they're not of the same race, religion, or background.
Right.
So if that doesn't exist, you're going to automatically assume, especially being a young guy, you're going to be like, well, they're not going to understand. They're not in it. They don't
Mm.
know. They don't know what I'm going through because they're
Hmm.
not affiliated with that group. But then when you have that person there, it's like, okay, similar background, similar upbringing. They'll understand it. They'll get the banter. There's banter, for example, like people from Truro. You'll go to people from Truro and be like, oh, remember A, B, C, and D, and they'll get it because you're from Truro.
That's right. But someone who's not from there would have no idea what you're talking about.
Exactly. So it's the same thing. It's the same thing. So you need that type of relationship dynamic, especially when you're an adolescent person, because you're not going to be comfortable sometimes talking to your parents. You're
That's
not
right.
going to be comfortable talking sometimes to maybe your siblings, and like God knows who you're going to confide in at certain moments. So I much rather have that person confide in someone they trust and being able to confide in them,
Hmm.
rather than keeping it under wraps, hiding it a bit, and feeling as if like they have no one to talk to about these things.
And
So
if there's no representation like that, like it's hard for me to believe that the president or the principal at your school who said that about you and your brother,
yeah,
like there's no way that she was interacting with
oh no,
a diverse group of people, because it's just someone who is in the world and talking to a wide range of different people.
yeah,
That just doesn't happen. Like, for her, she must have grown up in like the same place and talked to the same five friends that all thought that like this is the importance of having conversations with people from all over the world. I
exactly,
bet
yeah,
I saw this at an early age, where at the age of 13 I went away for boarding school.
yeah.
So I went to Vermont for high school to play ball,
That's nice,
and
yeah.
it was an international school.
Hmm.
So we had over 27 different countries represented at the school. So I was living in dorms with people from Spain and Ukraine
Hmm.
and Thailand, and name a country over my
Yeah,
4 years, because it wasn't the same countries every time. There
yeah,
would be like it was nuts.
yeah.
It was the best thing, and honestly, as uncomfortable as you think someone may feel being
Mhm,
in a position like that,
mhm.
I thrived in it, because I was like, hell yeah, like I want to learn how you do that, and the different foods these people would get care
Exactly,
packages
yeah,
from their food, from their family and stuff. Like, it was so incredible. And unfortunately, when I went to St. X,
yeah.
the first day I stepped on campus for the freshman orientation, where there's a lineup and everyone has to get
Yeah,
their room key. I'm just looking around like, something doesn't feel right here. Like
Yeah.
I went from an environment with like international students was the highest population to Saint FX, where it just felt
Mhm.
like holy shit, like this seems like enclosed little bubble
Yeah.
and whatever. And I was having a conversation with my buddy Jaden Smith, who
Yeah.
I just did the My Letter to Sports story on.
Mhm.
Um, he was talking to me about, I just lost my train of thought there, but what the whole bubble. Oh yes, he said I go to a predominantly white university, and sometimes walking around this campus, like especially at night, I honestly don't feel safe walking around this town
Mhm.
as a black person. And he often thinks to himself, what if Saint FX didn't have athletics?
Mhm.
How many black people would actually be at the school? And I was like,
So true.
damn, like that's kind of
That's
facts.
that's facts. That's facts. Yeah.
You
That's
know what I
facts.
mean? So
Yeah.
like for you to confirm the importance and how you recognize that as
Mhm.
something that is important, like
Yeah.
now you're adapting your behavior so kids growing up don't have to experience these certain things.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Honestly, fortunately, St. Mary's. I didn't know this prior to going there, but like their international like students, like their population of international students was ridiculous. Like when I went
Yes.
there, like we're talking all over the world, people like Arab countries, we're talking about
Yes.
China, we're talking about like South America, we're talking about the Caribbean, all Africa, all over the world, the people were there. And
Hmm.
like they weren't like, for example, it wasn't just international students who were coming to learn English or stuff. Like they were educated, they were going to high schools back in their home countries and going to St. Mary's there. So like there actually was a very like diverse population. So that was also like kind of an eye opener too. It's like, oh well, like that's very important. And even
But
the professors, same thing. Like
true.
most of my professors, like I want to say was a good 50-50 split between Caucasian and like minority professors. A very
Okay.
good 50-50 split, which is like surprising.
How immersed was the international student population with like the general population, or like how intertwined? Because I know at Saint FX we have, and kudos to X, they have the Cody or the International Cody Institute of
Yeah.
which focuses on international students, and
Mhm.
they're nationwide, they're recognized nationwide
Yeah.
for this program because
Yeah.
they really um, highlight the importance of diversity and inclusion and
Mhm.
equity. So, but at the same time, like the international students at X kind of stuck to themselves, and then you had this majority white population that were,
Mhm.
the big partiers
Mhm.
and whatever, and the international students, like they had their own dorm for the
Yeah.
Cody students.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
so what was that? Was it immersed at SMU?
It was honestly like looking back, and it was very immersed. I want to say the only students maybe who weren't as immersed yet, I would say, was probably like ESL students because again the communication
True.
barrier. There was programs for them to meet and greet and like meet people, but like a lot of the international students
It's
weren't.
hard. Yeah.
No, they weren't what do you call it? Like a good amount of them weren't even they didn't need ESL. They spoke English perfectly fine, maybe an accent here or there,
Yeah.
but they were well immersed. Like you really when you walked around, you assume that everybody was like either born in Canada or like grew up in Canada or maybe even just like with a high school, but a lot were international
I
students.
love that.
A lot were international. So like there was no real like cutoff or break. Like you had clicks in terms of maybe interest, like people in the science faculty, people, you know what I
Hmm.
mean, and like the arts faculty and stuff like that. But everybody was immersed. Like everybody was immersed. There wasn't like that cutoff. Like obviously you have athletes hanging out more with athletes, stuff like that. But like
Hmm.
even like international students, like they were everywhere in everything and with everything, like committees, like they're really well integrated. And so
Hmm.
that was a surprising thing for me because like most of the times like your preconceived notion is like, okay, international students don't know anything, like they're not like well immersed in the culture, they're not really aware of these things, not because it's a bad thing, it's because like they just showed up in the country and like they may
True.
have come from maybe English is still a second language to them, but for these guys it was like no, like they were immersed, like very well immersed. They still had their own committees, like you'd have like a Caribbean student society, you'd still have I mean an Oriental student society, but they were intermingled with everybody. There
Mhm.
wasn't kind of that segregation. That's one thing about St. Mary's that like I really appreciated was that you didn't have that segregation. You didn't have that cutoff between people. You have international students at our games. You know what I mean? Like they never watched football in their life. We used to do this program where we'd have international students come to our field and like we teach them about football.
Nice one.
They never played it before. They'd come, put on the equipment, they run a 40 and stuff like that, do drills. Our coach would come, Coach Coles would come and like teach them and stuff like that. It was like they were amazed by it. And then what would happen? They'd come to our games, they'd participate. Like
that's right. They felt the connection with you guys. They're like, yeah, hell yeah, I'm gonna go support these guys. That's well, I want to dive into your or like the moment you knew your sports career was over. What was that moment like? When did it happen? Where was it? How emotional was it? What was going through your mind? Like, like because I remember my moment was at the Metro Center or the Scotiabank Center playoffs. We got pumped in the first round by like 20. It was the year after we had our like top year with all of our fifth year seniors, and they graduated, and then we had a new class, and you know, I was the oldest on the team, and so we went in there, we made playoffs, but like we weren't expected to win. And so there was you know, our game was like, okay, in the middle of the fourth quarter, we knew the game was over. So like for me, I was sitting on the bench, I'm just taking everything in. I'm like, damn, I was playing this sport since I was 4 years old. I'm not going on to play pro after that. And I just had a flood of memories, and like me like finally accepting, all right, this is the last game I'll ever play competitively. What was that moment like for you?
So it was two things. Like I remember the last game I played in CIS. I mean, CU Sport, no, now it's U Sport, U Sport. And then the day I kind of decided to not play anymore. So the other stuff I'll probably get into probably a little bit after. But so for me, that first moment for me was, so once I graduated, what happened with me is that I only was at SMU technically 3.5 years.
Okay.
So I did a semester at community college
right.
in San Francisco. So in December, I got to go back home and train for the CFL Combine. I got invited to the CFL Combine in the Toronto one. And so I was training for the Combine. I was doing that and working full time at the same time. So I got my first job at a marketing agency as a billing coordinator. So I'm working.
Was that in Halifax?
No, this was all in Toronto. Like I came back. I graduated from St. Mary's class of 2018 winter.
Okay.
So like I was officially finished school. Like the minute I finished that exam in December 2017, I was out.
You didn't have any consideration of being like, damn, I might want to just stay and work in Halifax?
Family, man. I miss my family way too much.
Okay, good.
I miss my family, yeah.
Great answer.
And I miss my family. So when I was done, like the funny thing is I had to change my major before I left, because I would have had to stay at St. Mary's for another semester just to take an IT course.
Sure.
Because it wasn't I couldn't get that same course during the fall. So I switched my major last minute, and then I was able to graduate on time. And on top of that, you know what it is, man. You're not going to want to stay in uni paying all that money.
Facts.
And then just for one course.
Facts.
And so I came back home, started working, training for the Combine, and then I went to the Combine. Thought it did okay, and then didn't get drafted. My agent was telling me, like, you know, just keep your head up. Teams are calling, like you just be patient. You know what I mean? And then for me, it was like it just took some thinking about, man. Like, played my last game. We lost the AUS championship that fall that passed. I was thinking about it, man, and like doing the training, being at home and stuff like that, looking at my career path, what I have in front of me. It's like I loved everything football gave me, like everything. The people that I met, the things it taught me, the adversity that came with it. I would not take anything back from what I did. Even going to St. Mary's, like there were some years, man, where that's a whole different podcast of what we went through. But I wouldn't take any of that back and would have got me. So for me, it was really like I have all this breadth of information and knowledge of what I went through, you know. So for me, it may have been decided not to play anymore and kind of continue my career path, but it wasn't kind of the end of football, because I knew that even though I'm not physically on the field playing, I can contribute to it on the other side of the field, on the sideline.
Yes.
So that what triggered a lot for me, saying, okay, I'm not done with the sport yet. I'm just taking a different avenue at it now.
True. Which I relate to. Like I was able to accept the fact that like there was no more desire in me to like push for a pro contract. Like that just wasn't even in
Mhm.
my head. Like I didn't battle with the fact of, ooh, do I make this decision over the other? It was
Mhm.
just a no-brainer for me because I felt content with everything I had accomplished up to that point.
Yeah,
But like you too, like I love sports so much. Undress the Jersey has given me an avenue to stay involved with it. But at the same
exactly.
time, like I'm looking for a career on the other side of sports in terms of like the sports business part.
Exactly. Yeah,
I'm realizing is a massive part of sports, which I've never known
exactly.
anything about. So it's that same exciting feeling again, where I'm starting at the bottom and I
Yeah,
have to
exactly.
learn how to shoot a ball again. I have to learn how to dribble a ball. I have to work on these skills, but on the business side.
Exactly. And it was the same with me for coaching because coaching, like I understood because as a player, you're like, man, coaches don't do anything. Coaches are just
Yeah.
there. And then when I started coaching, I'm like, you get this nervous itch and tick where you're like, if I was in his body, I would do this, 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 and this.
Ah,
And you don't know why he's doing this. And so you have to remove yourself in the situation. You can't assume that he's the
yes.
same athletic ability as you. You can't assume that he's the same like intellect in terms of the sport as you. And you have to really take yourself out and be like, how can I help this young person
Mm,
get to where he wants to get to on the football field? And
mm.
so my first year coaching, because I coached at SMU, like minor football here, there with camps and football Nova Scotia, but like coaching a rep team for a full year, my full time first time doing it was 2018. So I'm
Okay.
dealing with high school kids, and high school kids, man. Like you tell them
They,
one thing,
yeah, they don't
I was in
always.
the same
Yeah.
shoes. Like you thought you knew everything,
Yep.
and so like it was a huge learning curve. But at the end of the day, like that relationship was built, and you started to realize that okay, you have to talk to them like this, not like that. You have to bridge a gap like this, like that.
Communication skills, man.
Exactly. And every kid is different. Every kid is different. One kid I had, a defensive lineman. This kid, he was like wasn't the most athletically gifted kid. Like a little bit scrawny, smaller, but like his grind was like his motor was ridiculous. So we had a game, and this kid, he responds differently to constructive criticism, right? So he's really hard on himself. So for him,
Mhm.
like I don't yell at the kid. There's some guys you have to yell at because they're hard headed at times. You have to yell at them. Him, he's mostly like, do this, this, and this. You're good to go. Don't worry about it. So him, we had a play. He blew the play in a sense. Blew contain. QB got off the pocket. Got like a big first down.
Okay.
Head coach yells, "Get him out the game! Get him out!" And then he's pissed. He has his helmet hanging low. That I grabbed him. I'm like, buddy. He's like, relax. You owe me a play. I'm like,
Mm,
take, relax. You owe me a play.
nice one.
He comes back. I'm like, no, get back in there. I only let him set one series because he was one of our better players. Goes back in. This kid goes as a coach, because again, like as a coach, when you see someone do something you planned and prepped them for,
Right.
it's
You're
the
like, hell
greatest
yeah.
satisfaction.
Yeah.
So much satisfaction. It's crazy. And so what happened is that he goes in. It's a screenplay. He plays the screen on the running back so well, the QB doesn't know what to do, and then he gets the sack. And
Hell
I'm
yeah.
like, what? I'm like, yo, this guy all in one play, he's screaming. And I literally got like literally I'm swamped, I'm jumping on the sideline going
That's
crazy,
so
you know what I
lit.
mean? And so like that satisfaction, that's what you love about coaching. It's being
That's
able
right.
to like, because you're not like you're helping this young person like get to where he wants to get to. You're
Mhm.
just giving them recommendations, you're giving suggestions. It's up to them to take it on. But when you see them take it on and take it personally and make it a mission for themselves, like there's no better satisfaction when it comes to like other than actually physically playing the game. Like
Sure.
that I can see why people like never get that coaching from this. I can see why.
Yeah, like coaching, and people always ask me, like, even I remember in high school, it'd be like, "Oh, are you interested in coaching after you're done?" And I just don't think so. Now that could change. Like maybe I don't know. I have a little kid who wants to play ball. Maybe I coach his team or something.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. Again, I don't think I love sports that much. Like that
Yeah.
part of sports, like how I
Yeah.
opened this up. There's two sides.
Yeah.
Um, um, would you agree? Would you agree with me when I'm thinking that I need to
Mhm.
like love the nitty gritty of drawing up plays, and because that's how I view coaching is like
Yeah.
you need
I
to
think
have this internal love and desire to be intellectual, like have a high IQ and just
mhm.
outsmart the other team, like drawing up
Mhm.
plays and stuff. Is that right?
There's levels. Like for example, if you're an OC or a DC, like for example, if you're a head coach of a ball team, it's usually like a couple coaches. So in ball, you have to be at that level. But for football, it's like you have positional coaches, you have offensive
True.
coordinators, defensive coordinators. And so
That's all good.
I'm gonna call, bro. Oh.
Welcome to the show, baby.
It's all good, don't worry. Sorry, my little bro. But so what was I saying? So like there's levels to it. So for me,
Yeah.
I was a DC, and then I was also a defensive line coach. So like there's the personal relationships you can get with certain players, like my position groups.
Yeah.
That's what the personal relationship was. So like you're building relationships with these guys, like they see you as a role model. So that's
the coach I'd want to be.
Exactly. So that you'd have to be a positional guy for that sense. And I guess in the football scheme of things.
Yes.
So those guys, I still keep in touch. Like two of those kids, both of them are playing at prep schools, American prep schools. Like they got Division I offers. Like they keep in contact with me. Like they see me as someone to come talk to about things like that.
Sure.
And so that relationship is there. And then as a DC level, you still have that relationship, but it gets a little bit more technical now, where you're looking at plays, you're scheming, and that's where the love of the game has to come from. An aspect of an intellectual side. I love that stuff. Like if I watch NFL games, like I see what the coordinators are doing, and I'm like, damn, like that's genius.
So smart, yeah.
That's genius. But at the same time, I love both aspects of it. So I think the aspect you love in terms of the mentorship side of things is where you thrive. And like, I don't know I'm ignorant about basketball coaching, so you have to fill me in on that side.
Yeah, but I guess that would be the assistant coaching role. And at X, I mean, we had Coach K, who was like the most obsessive, like in love, like loves, when you talk about loves competitive, bad, like loves the game.
Yeah.
There's nobody more than him. But then you would have the assistant coach who Doc was like Coach K. He loved the game too, and he was like in coach's ear to bounce things off. But then we had a former player who sat on the bench to be that mentor for us,
exactly,
kick us in the ass and tell us to smarten up and like motivate us. So there's definitely, and I mean, if you look at the NBA too, I'm sure there's like they have 15 different coaches, so one of them's got to be So the fact that you were able to rely on your love for coaching helped you with your like the closure of being an athlete.
Exactly. It helped me kind of get over in a sense too. Like, don't worry, you still get the itch, you still miss like playing, you still like you miss like the pregame stuff, the rituals, all you do, and like you miss everything. But that kind of helped me get above it, because the one thing that I realized after I finished playing that was a huge gap for me is that I didn't know anybody personally who was on the same path as I was, nor did my brother. So when you're somebody who's been through it, you made all these decisions, and looking back, you're like, I could have done this, could have done that. If had I known this, I could have done that. So for me, having that understanding and knowledge helped me close that door and say, okay, the next generation is trying to do the same thing. I can tell them the do's and don'ts. I can tell them, okay, if this coach is talking to you like this, don't just think he's talking to you because he's your best friend. At the end of the day, he wants you to be a signee. End of the day, you're another recruit. So don't get too personal in this relationship. Like, weigh out your options. Don't have your heart set on this thing just because you quote unquote like the environment. Like, weigh out your things and out different options. So that aspect of passing that knowledge on was a huge factor for me. It's like, I have something now, and I would have felt like, to use like this bad term, I would have felt pretty useless not to pass that knowledge on to somebody else or someone else.
Yeah, you want to give back.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that just speaks to your character and who you are. What do you think you would be doing if you like? What were your other interests as a kid, or what were your parents trying to get you to do, or like what would you be if you weren't a football player? What do you think you would be doing?
That's honestly a really hard question to be
honest. It's a hard question. I guess it is an almost impossible question.
It's really hard, man. But like, if I'm thinking on a personal interest now, like I love, like, other than like, I still work out like crazy. Like, I'm a huge workout junkie still.
Yeah.
Even without sport, like I love fitness.
That's something that stuck with me too.
And then honestly, like my other passion I would say is like cooking, man. I was watching the Food Channel like since like 5, bro. I'm telling you, I was watching Hell's Kitchen with Gordon Ramsay people, like, and I'm getting amped, and I'm like
trust me, Bobby Flay.
Oh, Bobby Flay was the man.
He was the man. I'm telling you.
He was throwing out Bobby Flay. He's the guy's the man. So literally, I was this like chubby little 5th grader, just like in the kitchen cooking up nonsense. And then literally that love for it, like at one point I'm like, yo, I want to be a chef one day. You know what I mean? Like that was like a goal of mine. But then I think my love of cooking kind of stirred away from being more of a professional thing of more of like
Yeah, for sure. It's more of
like it's a hobby. It's a hobby slash passion. So for
yes.
me, like if I cook anything like for my family, loved ones, or just want to make something like just amazing that slaps, like I'll do it. Or like family cookouts, barbecues. I'm always the guy on the grill, you know what I mean?
Nice one.
And then, but after I finished playing too, I thought to myself, like, I'm pretty confident. Like, if I had a choice or I had an option, like, which I'm kind of like thinking about still, is like, if I had an opportunity to open a restaurant, to not necessarily be the person cooking,
Sure.
but like to have that business there and just like figure out the nitty gritty of the ingredients, the menu, all that different stuff. And like you were talking about before, it's another grind or kind of like another startup for yourself. So that's always been something in the back of my head too. So I think if football wasn't there, like a restaurateur would be up there for sure. I think
Geez,
so.
that's tough. All right. Well, so you got to start. What's your go-to? What would you sell? What would be the item or like
Oh man, I got something in the works, man.
the cuisine?
I got something in the works right now, so I can't say anything yet.
All right. All right. So
20,
that means something's happening then.
2021, man. Just be ready. That's all I gotta
Let's
say.
go. Let's go. Yeah. For Christmas, I got a new knife set, and it's like the greatest gift I've ever received. They're like the sharpest of sharp knives.
Oh man, bless.
Yo,
You're dicing things final, eh?
oh man, like you nothing worse when you have a dull knife, especially if you're cutting like tomatoes,
Oh no.
because it just squirts everywhere. But these knives,
Oh man.
yo, I'm telling you, they just
It's a wrap. It's a wrap.
it's nuts. All right, Omar, anything else you want to add just in terms of time here? I mean, we touched on like we could have 5 different episodes and not run out of things to speak on. And that's the
Yeah,
hard part about podcasts.
exactly.
Is
Yeah.
like you need to keep it short. You need to keep it boom,
Exactly.
boom,
Yeah.
bang, bang, bang.
Exactly. Yeah.
I want to give you an opportunity to, if there's something that you were itching to like share or like something you've been thinking about for the past couple of weeks where you're like, damn, like I'm starting to obsess over this thought, or
Yeah.
or you have a thought in your head that you're trying to build on and you're not, because what happens for me is I'll ingest stuff in terms of like content, or I'll see new things happening in the news, and then I have my thoughts on it, but then I'm never tied to any thoughts that I have.
Exactly.
Like like I'm never deep like set in stone thoughts, because like I don't believe that's how things are supposed to, like, just because
Exactly.
you say something one day doesn't mean it doesn't define who you are or your
Exactly. Yeah.
stance on that. So like I'm trying to think of something that that's been on my mind lately. I don't know, like no, bro, like we've hit on it. I'm happy with this one.
Yeah. Honestly, I want to say like one of the big central themes a lot in terms of just my life, how things have been working and with sport and everything tied together, is like I think one really big issue and something that every person is gonna have to deal with in their lives, and just it's a constant battle, is having the character and like the fortitude to deal with adversity in different facets of life. And I think sport in general, like no matter what level you played it in, teaches you at a high level how to deal with adversity and how to overcome it. Also the do's and don'ts of, because there's going to be moments where you're hit with something. Like in a football game, you have fourth quarter, you're down a score. Are you going to fold or not? You know what I mean? You're a young guy, you have a test coming up, you know what I mean? You have 4 hours to study. Are you going to study or you're not? You got bills to pay, are you going to pay it or not? You know what I mean? A relationship that you have with a family, a friend, a significant other, are you going to fight for it or not? Like that adversity, I feel like it's something that a lot of people haven't been trained to expose to enough to deal with. And I think a lot of people who played sports, athletes included, and people who have been around sports will realize that sport helps you build an ability and a capability to deal with adversity at a high level. And that's something that I wish everybody could have, or have at least experience with just remotely, so they can see what it's like.
It's making the conscious decision to either do something or not do something. Like
Exactly.
Far too often there's situations that come up as small as like, oh, you drop a little bit of toothpaste on the floor or on the counter, and you're like, it's not that big of a deal. Like I can just leave it there and dip off.
Yeah.
But then like the athlete in me is like, no, like I'm going to do it and I'm going to do it right. And so
Bad habits.
I'm going to take the
Exactly.
5 seconds to clean that up.
Exactly.
But it's also so easy not to clean it up.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I couldn't agree with you more in terms of like sports teaches you that in terms of like in a basketball sense, like at the end of the game, you know the other team's going to foul you. So like it's a matter of, do I want to be the one to have the responsibility to go to the free throw line, or
Exactly.
if I am I going to shy away from the ball and pretend like I can't, like I'm not open. So like
Exactly.
so yeah, I don't know what other areas in life where people can learn that sort of like attacking that uncomfortable feeling and making the
Yeah.
decision to do it, but it ultimately comes down to a certain level of discipline. and,
Exactly. Yeah.
and I'll say my least the moments that I feel the least,
Mhm.
or, or the moments I feel worse,
Mhm.
or the worst, like the least productive, or
Mhm.
like last week I had a very low productive week, and
Yeah.
it's just because I said no to all of those
Yeah.
uncomfortable things, like, you
Yeah.
know, I didn't get out of bed on time, I stayed in bed,
Exactly.
I didn't make my bed, I
Yeah.
chose to go on TikTok instead of like
Yeah.
make something for Undressed Jersey, and it was an accumulation of all these things, of all those
Exactly.
things, and it made it very easy for me to like just slack off,
Yeah.
and in turn I felt the worst that I felt. I felt anxious. I felt all
Yeah.
this kind of stuff, and it's when you do those, annoying little 5 second tasks where
Yeah.
it builds momentum.
Okay. I'll give you one anecdotal thing or a little piece of
Yes,
advice. So
please.
this is something from a religious perspective, but it's human nature. So in Islam, there's something that's called in Arabic, it's called the nafs. And nafs, like it translates literally to the self, but the best kind of translated word is probably the ego. So what it is that your ego, as it is, as human beings, we're naturally inclined to laziness. We're naturally inclined to just chill, relax, and just not do what we want to do. So a lot of people don't realize like the successful people in life, they've trained this ego to gear towards what they wanted to. And the reason why they changed it more to what they wanted to do is because they worked with it. It's like a muscle. So what they would do is that the things that they don't want to do, they'd force themselves to do that. They'd have these small habits and changes incrementally. So when the big decisions come, they can say yes and not feel any type of way about it. So for example, like you making your bed in the morning. Oh, you don't want to make your bed in the morning. You keep making it every morning, even though you hate it, to a point where what you're just comfortable with its habit with you. You know what I mean? Waking up at a certain time every single day, you know, doing like a journaling every single day, making those tasks every single day to a point where you're breaking yourself literally and you're molded to what you want to do. That's why you have guys like David Goggins, for example, just freak
Yeah,
of nature.
callousing the mind.
Exact callousing
Yeah.
the mind. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people who've done extraordinary things in their lives have that same mentality where it's like, do what you don't like doing so you can do what you want to do. You know what I mean? Like that's literally like it's sounds really redundant, but it literally works.
And when you put it in terms of like it's literally a muscle, I think athletes relate to that so well, because it's like going to the gym. If you don't work out for a month,
Yeah,
and then you hit that first workout back,
yeah.
the next 3 days you're sore as hell.
You're shot, bro.
You know what I mean? So like,
You're shot,
like,
man.
but if you were to do that same workout, but you didn't take a month's break, you probably wouldn't be as sore the next day. So
Exactly.
so it's literally training a muscle and getting it to the point, so when it comes time to make this huge decision, all of those
Exactly.
little decisions have built this muscle in order to endure the big one.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And so like we said, for example, when your relationship's on fire, you know what I mean? Like you have to pick a job, like you're making decisions financially, career wise, like you can make those decisions without having that like cowardice and not having that like easy way out mentality. Things you're tackling it head on.
It's the easy way out. It is.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because it's so easy to say no to those things,
Yeah.
but it sets you back so far, and it destroys you mentally.
Yeah. You don't even realize it, man. It just takes staying up like an hour longer to watch.
Trust me. And I'm like, why am I staying up? Like nothing good ever happens past 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly,
It's fact.
man.
Omar, that's a great way to end this. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I think there's a ton of gems in there.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to realize is like, yeah, there's certain people out there that I want to contact and like get them on the show.
Yeah.
But it's the ones where like, you know, how you got on this show where I'm like, I easily could have said the odd way out and been like, nah, man, like, no, but like this is turning out to be one of my favorite episodes. So like, I appreciate you for sticking your neck out and being like, yo, I'm trying to come on the pod because you're an intelligent and highly emotional and great person. You know, you're a personal person. So I appreciate you.
No, I appreciate it, man. Honestly, like I was of the same mindset too, like of, you know, like just reach out, man. Like I saw amazing content. I'm like, I feel as though I can contribute something positively.
That's
you know
love.
what I mean? So like it is love, man. And then just so give it back, very simply, just give it back. And so that's how I reached out. I'm like, you know what, like he's speaking facts. Like
my guy.
A lot of people want to hear this stuff too. So it's like gotta add to it.
Yeah. You know? No, I'm glad you did, bro. I'll be in contact or I'll be in touch. Depending on how strong my muscle is in terms of like getting shit done. Like I just need so I listen back to the whole thing, taking notes.
Yeah.
And then I do my edits and then I render it out. So what's today? Today is Wednesday.
Yeah, it's the third.
It usually helps when I give myself a date to get this out, but I'm gonna say it'll be out Sunday night.
Okay, no, perfect, man. I appreciate the time, bro, man. It's been it's a really good conversation.
Absolutely, you know, and I'm sure we'll have more to come too. So
100% down, man. Anytime you need anything, hit me up.
My guy. All right, bro. Take care.
I appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Hey guys, it's Omer Abdallah, former defensive lineman at St. Mary's University, and you were just watching Undress the Jersey.